Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance. All backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast, where we deep dive into the best matches in AEW history. Brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network and your host, Sam Brown. Hello and welcome to the AEW Match Guide podcast. I'm your host, Sam Brown. Thank you for joining me. Today, we continue the fourth season of the Match Guide, where we'll be looking beyond the ropes of Tony Khan's ring to the matches, wrestlers, promotions, and movements that influenced All Elite Wrestling. If you enjoy the show today, you can subscribe or rate it on your podcast app of choice, support the Social Suplex podcast financially through Red Circle, and make sure you check out all of the other great shows on the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where we cover all aspects of the world of pro wrestling. We've got One Nation Radio, Keeping It Strong Style, All Things Elite, Tunnel Talk, the Trish and Sarah Wrestling Podcast, Wrestle Art with Chris Things, Imp's AEW Adventure, and Joshing Around. And you can subscribe to the Social Suplex newsletter at socialsuplex.com/newsletter. We also have a Discord where you can become part of our community, where you can chat with all the hosts of our podcasts, as well as other wrestling fans from around the world. There's links for all of these things in the podcast description. My guest for today is one of my most frequent guests, a man with a proclivity for positivity. It's Floyd from All Things Elite. And we're starting a 2-episode look at Tony Khan's childhood favorite wrestler, digging into Ric Flair versus Sting for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship from Jim Crockett Promotions' Clash of Champions 1988. Welcome to the podcast, Floyd. It's always good to have you here, mate.
Well, thank you for having me. This is one of my childhood favorite matches. We were discussing, I was about 6 years old when this match happened, and it was on cable versus pay-per-view, which trying to get my dad to watch a pay-per-view. It was one of those things. The answer was no, so you didn't even ask. You knew the answer before. I never asked to watch, like the big shows on pay-per-view. That just wasn't happening. He would occasionally get the boxing matches like Tyson or whatever, Sugar Ray Leonard, whatever was on pay-per-view, he would get those, but this wasn't going to happen. But I am very excited to be on here. About 10 hours ago, I recorded an episode of One Nation Radio, and that was fun. But yeah, this is you can always get me on to talk about matches, because looking at it, it's almost like watching a time capsule in wrestling. Yes.
Oh, it really is.
It really is like watching a time capsule. You got younger Jim Ross, and his voice is a lot higher. Yep. His voice is a lot higher. And you hear like the things people like when he calls a match now, and he's like, oh, why is he being all grumpy old man? This is who he's been for 40 years. He's still calling the babyface dumb. He's still making inappropriate comments about penthouse models. I mean, okay. I got a question. Well, when you got a penthouse model as the judge, what's the appropriate comment?
Well, you probably don't say she's familiar with plenty of action. So
I mean, literally, the reason she's there, she's famous for being naked.
Floyd, I don't want you to get canceled on my podcast. You can't do that. You're too valuable to this network, mate.
No, I'm just saying, what's the appropriate comment? Just don't. I mean, I guess now people would just not say anything. Yes. But in the 80s, it was like, why is she judging a professional wrestling match?
Well, that's a good question. That is a question. That is definitely not. There's some questions I have about the qualifications of these judges, which I'm going to get to.
Yes, it feels like they could have picked the 5 drunk friends in the front row, and they would have been more qualified to say who won the match than the people that they got.
100%. 100%. Floyd, we've already gone off on a wild tangent. I'm not expecting to get into that this early in the podcast. But, we're here now. Yeah, look, I originally asked you to do this podcast, and I said I wanted to do a podcast about Sting because obviously he became a big part of AEW, after AEW started, and there was a big, particularly his retirement was a huge success for AEW in terms of the pay-per-view they did and everything. And I guess the legacy of Sting in AEW is something that's going to live large. So I figured when we're looking at the things that influenced AEW and sort of went on, the wrestlers and the movements and that went into AEW, we've got to talk about a young Sting at some point. And you had mentioned in the past that you were a little Stinger when
Absolutely.
You were a lot younger in your life, Floyd. So tell me about that. What was he your first favorite wrestler, and what was it you saw in him?
Okay, so my first favorite wrestler, I think, I'm gonna say I think, because I gravitated to the painted face wrestlers back then. That was it. If you had a painted face, I liked you. That was so I believe Sting was my first favorite. It's either Sting or Kerry Von Erich. Or, I don't know which one. They were both like really big at that point in time in my life. So it was one of those two people. I'm gonna lean with Sting. I remember my first wrestling figure I ever owned that was bought for me, not a hand-me-down from my brother, was a Sting figure. And it's like, he was very much a big part of my life. The Stinger Splash was like, when I was playing with my like stuffed teddy animals and stuff, I'd throw them in the corner and do the little Stinger Splash. Imagine little Floyd doing that. And it was just like I was, it's passionate, and I was obsessed with wrestling as I am now. I was probably more obsessed with it then, because I was just like anything. We had the Spanish channels on cable. I remember turning it on and watching Lucha Libre, and I just watched. If it was in a ring and fighting, I would watch it. So it was like, but Sting, very important to my youth and my ability to become a fan. And it's this match directly ties into his retirement match. If you because the match was in Greensboro, and the reason they picked Greensboro for his retirement match is because of this match.
Very cool that you were a little Stinger growing up and followed him as a kid. I've got to ask, I guess, if you're a Stinger at the time, and this is going to end up being back-to-back podcasts about him, what were your thoughts on Ric Flair? What did you think of Ric Flair when you were a kid? Because I know you're you're an edgy boy now and you love your heels now. But what did little Floyd think of?
So the basis of me getting into wrestling, as I've talked about many times, was my older brother Kenneth, who was like 9 years older than me. Ric Flair was his favorite wrestler, like absolute favorite wrestler. And I don't know, a lot of people don't understand how big the Horsemen and Ric Flair were into the culture of the Black community. How many Black people just loved Ric Flair. He was suits and, like limousines and jets, and he represented wealth. Everything of it. So my dad, who absolutely hated that we liked wrestling, he hated that fake shit, as he called it, loved Ric Flair. Like everybody else was fake except Ric Flair in his mind. He would sit down. I remember him stopping and watching Ric Flair. So when I was growing up, I always thought I was like the second generation wrestling fan. And then as I got older, I found out he fucking hated it. But my brother was like, Ric Flair's the best. Ric Flair's the reason they make money. Ric Flair's the reason everything. You gotta like Ric Flair. So in this time, of course, I was, now I wouldn't call it rebelling, but I like Sting. I like the good guys. I didn't really hate Ric Flair, but I definitely wanted Sting to beat Ric Flair so I could rub it in my brother's face. That has always been that edgy boy, as you say, has always been there. Yeah, it's always been there. It's like if you're in a room full of 5 people and 4 are going for the other guy, I'm gonna be the one guy going for the other guy just because it pisses off the other 4 people. So that's how that started very young, and it was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna root for Sting. But Sting was big. He was, he had a painted face. He was cool looking. He was from Venice Beach, California, and everybody that was from California was awesome. And
he's got muscle, like he's built, he's jacked.
Yeah. It was funny. He's listed at 270 pounds. That dude was maybe 230. So it was just like, it was absolutely like, he was larger than life. I loved me some Sting, and then Ric Flair was larger than life. He was the Yankees. He was at that time, if you're going in the 80s, the dynasty that was going on was in professional football was the San Francisco 49ers. He was the guy that it was like, well, if you had a favorite, you knew he was going to go up against them. So even though I didn't want him to win, even though I didn't like him, there was always this reverence for Ric Flair. He was in professional wrestling, he was kind of God-like.
Oh, I was just going to suggest a little bit like maybe the 80s Lakers as well.
Yes, 80s Lakers, definitely. Anybody you could think of, because Ric Flair was dressing better and looking better than your favorite professional athlete. He was there. He represented wealth. He was, at the time, there was who am I thinking of? But I'll just go with Donald Trump. At that time, was the face of wealth in America. He was the face of wealth in America, and it was just like, that's kind of who he was, mentally. If you had to think of the representation, he was just all about money and all that stuff. It was before this was almost apolitical Trump. So this was in the 80s and stuff. And so, it was kind of crazy. I believe this was going up against WrestleMania 4, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it a bit.
I only say that and we'll talk about it more. It's because 4 was in a Trump. It was in a Atlantic City and a Trump arena. So that's kind of crazy.
There you go. I didn't even think about bringing up Trump in that. But look, as you mentioned, this is Clash of Champions 88. It is counter-program. It is running directly up against WrestleMania 4, which, when you hear that now, running directly up against WrestleMania, absolute maniac, Jim Crockett. But there's a bit of history to this. Like in 87, Vince McMahon used the Survivor Series, his first Survivor Series, to counter-program the Jim Crockett Promotions biggest show, Starrcade, in November on Thanksgiving. And he put the 2 pay-per-views against one another. And then in January, he ran his first ever Royal Rumble on free TV against Jim Crockett's pay-per-view, the Bunkhouse Stampede. So looking for a bit of revenge, Jim Crockett talks to TBS, his broadcast partners, and goes free-to-air up against WrestleMania 4, the pay-per-view. And this is the main event of it. Ric Flair versus Sting. So what were you watching in your house, Floyd? Were you watching TBS, or were you tuned into the pay-per-view?
Yeah, well, we had stolen cable, so we were tuning into TBS. Like I said, pay-per-view was a little different. Pay-per-view was a little different. Of course, I now know we didn't order pay-per-views because we had illegal cable, so there was no one to order it from. You can't really order it when you're not.
You got to call up and tell on yourself.
So and my dad saying no wasn't him being mean. It just really wasn't an option. But so we were watching TBS. I remember watching this live. I remember sitting in front of it. I remember the excitement for the weeks up to it. I remember talking about it at school with people I'm still friends with today. My friend Noel.
Nice.
Noel is like been my friend since I was 5. And I remember talking about this match and the build up and that Sting was going to win it. This is like I knew it. I knew Sting was going to win. This was the one.
It's interesting with the talking about the counter programming. Like Tony Khan has actually he's kind of compared himself to Jim Crockett a number of times.
Many times.
Most famously when he was banging the desk, telling he was he was fucking over it, and he's got more money than fucking Jim Crockett anyway.
Yes.
One of his more probably like frustrated and angry moves that you've seen him in. He's sort of not like that today, but a few years ago when his hair was a bit wilder and his attitude was a bit wilder. That was something that happened. It's interesting to see it sort of coming back around full circle, because obviously the WWF has counter-programmed AEW so many times at this point. NXT going up against Dynamite was counter-programming from the start, but
they're double counter-programming All In. They're double counter. They got an NXT
fucking triple threat. They triple programmed it last. They had last year they had the NXT, the Evolution, the Saturday night's main event, the TNA.
It's gonna be NXT and AAA in the same day, in the same city, in Houston, Texas, on that. And it's just, for me, it's so unnecessary. The reason I say it's unnecessary is wrestling is so segmented now. If you're going to watch the AEW show, you're generally not picking it over the WWE show or the NXT show. You're not really picking, you know what I mean? If you're going to watch the AEW show, you're going to watch the AEW show. I'm one of the few wrestling sickos that watches as much of the WWE and AEW both as I can. But like that day, to me, it's like I'm going to be at All In, so that's a whole different situation. But yeah, if I want to watch NXT and AAA, I'll just watch it later. It's everywhere available. For me, I have this thing when WWE clearly is counter programming AEW, I won't watch the show at all. I didn't watch Evolution. I didn't watch any of those, just because I know they only did the show out of spite. So that's my own personal Floyd thing. I'm just like, I'm not watching it, because you could have put it on a different day and I could have watched all the wrestling. But you're the one that's trying to make me choose. You know what I mean? You're trying to make me choose. Why?
Especially that Evolution one last year was just so friggin' spiteful. To do that, to use that particular pay-per-view and that brand that people have been hardcore wrestling fans have been crying out, do another Evolution, do another Evolution. No, we're not going to do it. No, we're not going to do it. No, we're going to. Oh, I guess we'll do it on the day that All In's on. What a weird coincidence. It's just so gross and spiteful that they would use that on to counter program. Put that, if you want to make a celebration of women's wrestling, which is what Evolution should have been, stick it on a weekend that's free, because you know what? A lot of AEW fans would probably actually cross the line and watch that one. I probably would. I watch bugger all WWE. I barely even watch WrestleMania, but I would probably watch that.
It was in Atlanta. I plan to go. I plan to go to Evolution too. I do my best in everything I can to support women's wrestling, just because at times, they do get put sometimes in terrible spots like that. Yeah. And they're still expected to perform. And you put them up against AEW's WrestleMania and you're like, oh man, I can't believe the numbers are down. No shit, the numbers are down. People are watching, the people are watching All In because it's AEW's version, their biggest show of the year. So it's just any spite or anything that came back from that, I was just like, blowback that came back on the women. I'm like, dude, y'all kind of set them up for failure, because the most thing you were going to do, is maybe, you were going to kind of nick AEW, maybe, the fans
like that 1,000 people or something.
Yeah, the fans that I'm not going to watch All In because I'm watching Evolution is, nominal at best, what I mean? And it's just I just, like I said, it's just no need. There's so much time, there's 100%. So much space that AEW and WWE can exist, and WWE would never even notice it in their bottom line. You know, if they just did their show. They're the ones that's making this competitive, because it's like Coke trying to take down like Bang energy drink. Bang energy drink exists in its own world. If you want to bang, you're not like going up and you're like, oh, I'm going to choose this energy drink over this Coke. You know, you're going to pick the one that you want. They can both exist. And it's just like, you don't really see this a lot in other industries. You know what I mean? It's like when you have a movie like Supergirl or whatever come out, people like generally they look for the week that nothing's happening to try to maximize the people that are watching it, as opposed to wrestling's like, I know everyone's planning to do this on August 30th, but F you, here's 2 more shows. Pick which ones you're more loyal to. And it's like, it's stupid.
Well, I was thinking the interesting kind of full circle thing with going back to the counter programming we're talking about, and how Clash of Champions goes up against WrestleMania 4. Like, people are saying, should Tony Khan counter program WrestleMania in Saudi Arabia next year and like host a thing in America, because the WWE has decided to desert America and do WrestleMania, their biggest show in the year, sell it off to the Saudis for blood money. Can Tony Khan like be the good guy and swoop in and run a thing? Like, personally, I don't think
I wouldn't run it up against WrestleMania.
I wouldn't run it. And I wouldn't run run a weekend or something. Or run something a different weekend and have something so that all the indies and stuff can go. See what happens. And the problem is, if it doesn't work, it's a bad look.
Well, my big thing is, you don't want to do what they do.
No,
simple.
100%.
You don't want to be. There. You know, you want to be. You are the steward to me. AEW is the steward of professional wrestling. You know what I mean? They don't try to buy New Japan, or they didn't try to buy these companies. They're like, hey, let's work together and let's do a show together. And it's just like, making your fan base choose is only going to hurt you. But if you pick the weekend before or the weekend after, you work with the independent companies and you do your own professional wrestling weekend, you know, I think that's more ideal and the smarter take. And you'd be like, okay, we did WrestleMania. We did a version of WrestleMania in the States that, you know, matched up with WrestleMania that they took away in Saudi. And it's just like for me, I'm like, Saudi Mania, you know, there's the political side and all that stuff to it. I honestly, it's like, if you were going to do a WrestleMania outside of America, to me, it had to be London. You know what I mean? That's always been the international, you know, like, I'm not talking Canada, but the international home of WWE, the international fan base is London. As many WrestleManias I've been to, the most consistent people I see are people from the UK coming over. So if you were going to do it outside, that's where it should have been. Saudi, we're in this point where it's TKO, Endeavor. It's all about the money, you know. Even crazy when you say this, Vince would have never done this. Vince would have never. So I honestly say that they're doing stuff. This is not the look Endeavor and TKO wants. You're doing stuff Vince wouldn't have done. That is crazy to think about. Like, Vince looks like the good guy compared to you, which is, do you ever want to be there?
No, you do not. Let's slip back to 88, Floyd. Let's 88. Let's talk about the build to what's old is new again. Let's talk about the build to this match. You know, it's relatively simple, really. You've got Flair at this point, 39 years old, you know, multi-time world champion, really the peak of his career. And then on the other side, you've got Sting, 29, up and coming, hasn't become a world champion yet. It's very simple, but for what they're going to do, it really is just like the perfect kind of build you could do. And it's exactly what you have a champion like Ric Flair for.
Absolutely. And this is what, when you talk about Ric Flair, this is what, to me, made Ric Flair a better professional wrestler than almost anyone, is that you could put him in there with someone that either didn't have a lot of experience, wasn't in the spotlight then, and he would, he'd carry them in such a way that by the end of the match or the end of the show, you're like, oh my God, this guy's great. I always compared it like Bret Hart with Tom Brady. They had that match and he made him look so good. Everybody's like, oh, that guy's a star. And then, it's like, oh, well, no, no, he's not. He was just working with Bret Hart. And that's what you felt like a lot of people you could throw. I mean, Barry Windham was extremely talented and Lex Luger had this amazing look. And all this time you put him in the match with Ric Flair and it was just like, okay. And it was like, it was the test to see how the fans reacted to you and were you ready? Were you really ready? And it was like Sting. He had the look, he had the charisma, the fans liked him, the painted face. He was super cool. He Ric Flair would go woo, he would go which was unintentionally the opposite of woo. It was like woo was WOOO, Sting would scream OOOW, that kind of thing. And it was just like, okay, is this kid really ready? And okay, we're gonna put him in this big time spot because it is a big time spot. It was
100%.
It was counter programming WWF. The eyes, the goal was to take eyes away from the WWF. So it's like, going into this match, the little Stinger was like, oh, Sting's got him. JJ Dillon had interfered in some of the other matches that they had, and he's in the Shark Tank. Oh, Sting's gonna win this, that kind of thing.
And you talk about counter programming, like this is going up against the tournament that they did, which is just like a whole series of really short matches. There's like 2 matches on the whole card that go over 10 minutes, and these guys are going to go in there and they're going to wrestle a long match. So like it really is putting him in a big spot, and a spot where he's really set if he takes it like to stand out. And against Ric Flair, of course, like as you said, he's the perfect wrestler for having in this sort of spot, for making someone look good, making them look great, and could do it with so many different kinds of wrestlers. But you put someone in there with some charisma, with a great look. Sting has got some great athleticism as well as he moves about the ring, particularly for someone in the 80s. It's going to be good. So yeah, let's get into the actual match itself. Of course, as we always do here on the AEW Match Guide, we will give it its flowers. The Wrestling Observer, Dave Meltzer, he gave it 4.75, 4 stars and 3/4. And on Cage Match, it is currently rated 8.79. It won the Match of the Year for 1988, and it is still the second highest American match for 1988 on Cage Match. So it's a match that was well regarded at the time and is still very well regarded to this day, or almost has gotten, more legendary with age, which we'll talk about towards the end. Floyd, when I switched this show on, watching the intro, the WCW, I've got to give a shout out, like the WCW YouTube channel, fantastic resource. It's got the whole show on there, all of the graphics, the whole start to finish, and like looking at it, the old school synths, the electronic drum kit, the lightning strikes on the NWA graphics. I wasn't even born till 89, but mate, this took me back. I felt like I was home. It reminded me, what it reminded me of? It reminded me of the old Gladiators intro. You would have had American Gladiators. Yes. We had Australian Gladiators, and I actually got sidetracked by like then going down a Gladiators rabbit hole and watching some episodes of the first season of Australian Gladiators when I after I loaded this up and heard the synths and saw the lightning.
Yeah, dude, and this was like, this is what they did with TV back then. And it was just, especially like, this was much more of a sports presentation. So they were doing everything at that, even in the intro, bring your eyes in, pay attention to us. We're big, we're amazing, we're what's hip. To use a good old 80s word right there, hip.
Cutting edge technology. And yes. they have the video package, and that basically sets up the story that we outlined before. Can Sting do it? Is Sting ready to go against the multi-year world champion at this point? Is at the peak of his powers?
Yes, a 5-time world champion, Ric Flair. At 39 years old, he was 5-time champion. he won it 11 more times.
Yep.
Just think about that. 39 is like, you see people like Cody and Dax, and these people are like, oh, I'm only going to wrestle 5 more years. This was kind of like Ric Flair's still in his prime at 39. He wrestles, he's on the top of WCW for a few more years before he goes to WWF, and then comes back and is back on top of WCW in his mid-40s. It's just, it's a little different.
Yeah, next week, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be covering him after he came back, and we're going to be doing the match against Vader in 1993. So more to look out for there. But that's
5 years later.
And he's still at his peak. That's potential retirement match at that point. But he's still really at his peak athletically in that time, and you got to give him credit for like the phenomenal shape he was in, like the cardio of this bloke. I'm 38 now, and man, I'm trying to like run 5Ks in twice a week at the moment. It's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah.
And I'm someone who's, somewhat fit. But Ric Flair is in just phenomenal shape for a 39-year-old at this point.
Yeah, he was wrestling an hour 6 days a week. So this match only being 45 minutes probably was a little break for him. Yeah, it's like whatever.
Yeah, so we've got the judges out first. NWA official Gary Juster, Hattie Mullen, who's she's the Penthouse model we mentioned before. There's a wrestler, Sandy Scott, and then there's 2 other judges. There's Jason Harvey, who's from the Wonder Years, and Ken Osman from Leave It to Beaver. So, you've got an interesting mixture of television stars, wrestling officials, and a Penthouse model in there.
So just to talk about these little people, the guy that played he was Eddie Haskell on Leave It to Beaver, the mischievous best friend of the Beaver. And so that show was being syndicated on TBS and TBS TNT. It would come on every morning at 5:05 a.m. And then Jason Hervey, of course, was on the Wonder Years. He played the main character's older brother. So I was watching the Wonder Years weekly. Leave It to Beaver was a huge part of my life. So this was like some of crossover here, because if you've ever listened to the show, I'm a huge TV guy, like a huge TV guy. So this is like a little bit of a crossover. And interesting fun fact is Jason Hervey actually ended up running a production company with Eric Bischoff years later.
Sting comes out straight afterwards, then Flair behind him. Flair's beautiful white robe, as we said, like phenomenal shape, and he has big gold around his waist. Floyd, is there a better belt than big gold?
No, the first
100%
belt,
no.
Yeah, first belt I ever owned was the big gold belt. It was, it was like that was the world title. I mean, double winged eagle was great. Don't get me wrong. But the world title, like in our house, Ric Flair was the world champion. Hogan was the champion of the other company, but Ric Flair was the world's champion. NWA meant so much more in my house than WWF. I mean, we watched both, don't get me wrong, but the world's champion was Ric Flair. That was the belt you wanted. Hogan wasn't good enough to win that belt in our mind.
You can see the influence on the AEW belt when you look at Big Gold.
Yes.
They went for something that is big and gold. It does have the brand name on it, which is it like more of a modern thing, I guess.
Yes.
To have the brand name on it. That's like following UFC, following WWE. But they went, no, we're gonna have something. We're gonna have a lot of gold on this. We're gonna have a lot of gems, and you can definitely see the influence of the belt light that is like Big Gold. And yeah, for me, it is by a long way the best looking belt in wrestling. I love the version 4 IWGP, but that's almost as much for what it meant for the people who carried it. The fact that it was Tanahashi, Okada, Omega, Styles, Naito, like it's as much for that as it is for anything else. For how it looks, but just aesthetically, Big Gold.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say it was a big gold belt too. The IW, so you have a thing for big gold belts there.
Yeah, there we go. Need to get me one day.
Yes.
We've got JJ Dillon, Flair's manager, locked in a shark cage at ringside. As we said, we've got Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone on commentary. you know, they explain this is a 45-minute time limit instead of 60 minutes due to TV. You know, it's kind of cool how they do that. Like, I don't know, it's just a bit different, you know. And then we get into the match, and early on we've got, you know, this is a match we're going to go back and forth with how the match goes, and how the ebbs and flows of it progress. But early on, you know, Sting just absolutely overpowers Flair. They lock up doing tests of strength. Sting just walks all over Flair early on, bunch of hip topsers, even gets him up for a military press, and Flair just is not wanting to engage. It's a real simple start, but it just says straight away, Sting is big, he is strong, and he has the upper hand.
Yeah, he did this armbar, and then Sting went right into a nip up. And he's like, man, that's a great nip up for somebody that's 270 pounds. And it's funny how much we know about bodies and mass and all that stuff when you look at Sting and you're like, dude, you're not 270 pounds by any means. Like, Ova's listed at 265. Does he look as big as Ova? So, no,
hey, look,
it's just
Adam Cole's listed as 6 foot, mate.
Yeah, no,
the line continues.
Yeah, I was about to say, if you're hearing me, I hope you hear the love of this. That's what I love about professional wrestling, is that everything you thought, oh, that has to be, everything was a work. I wanted to be 6'2" like Arn Anderson. And the first time I met Arn Anderson, I'm a good inch taller than him. And I'm like, I'm only 6 foot. I wanted to be 6'2" to look like you. You were not 6'2".
You know, it's amazing they got away with it, given that they, you know, like they were in arenas with these people. Like, surely these people eyeballed them and went like, oh, hold on a second, this is not necessarily on the up and up.
You know what? Think about it. If you're a guy and you standing up next to 6'2" Arn Anderson and you're a little taller, you just say, hey, I'm 6'3"
Yeah,
now.
I guess I'm 6'2" as well.
Yeah, you know, you're not going to sit there and fight him. You're like, hey, I get to be taller now.
Yeah. Yeah, like, and as I said, like that sort of that stretch, the way that the match is structured, like early on, it's all Sting. Like, he barely sells for the first 10 minutes this match.
Correct.
Yeah, he's just getting by far the majority of the offense. He's doing the most damage. And like, you know, we're setting up for what's happening later on, but like, I just want to talk a little bit about the offense and sort of the psychology and the way that this match looks, because obviously, you know, we are used to what wrestling looks like in 2026. Like, it's super dynamic. And, you know, watching this, I can certainly see how, you know, like what old timers get at when they talk about psychology and realism in wrestling. This match is just like, it's way less dynamic than what we'd see today, but it's very strategically wrestled, and it really looks like there is a struggle in all of the holds. Like, it's slower, but you can feel the struggle. Even though, as we said, Sting is dominating, like, you can feel the struggle and the tension in the holds in a way that I don't think you see as much today.
Yeah, and this was actually, even for them, was considered a faster paced match. I didn't I haven't watched this match in a while. The fact that they didn't send in a chin lock for 20 minutes, because a lot of Ric Flair matches, good portions of the matches were in chin locks. They didn't really do this in this match. This was a very active wrestling match, you know, not a lot of rest holds. So, yeah, even for then, that was the first thing I noticed, that this was, compared to then, a faster paced match.
But when we look at it, it's still like there is a bit where, you know, like Sting, he's holding Flair in a headlock for a good 2 or 3 minutes, but they're fighting the whole time. Like, they're struggling through it. And, you know, I'm not saying this to say either way is better or worse. It's different.
No.
Like,
this is different.
And I can see why some people, you know, who grew up on this, like, want to see that struggle and want to see that fight in their psychology and in the way the wrestling match works. Now, I love the dynamism of wrestling today. And like, these guys, they are actually quite athletic. As you said, like, you compare this to a Hulk Hogan match or something, and it's totally different again.
45 minutes. That's probably all of the wrestling that you got in the tournaments on WrestleMania 4 by comparison. This was more wrestling than you probably saw on that whole show. You know what I mean? Like, it's in the tournaments and stuff. So it's just like, you know, when you talk about the parallels of AEW, I mean, that is a direct parallel right there.
Mm.
WCW is actually trying to put on full form wrestling matches, main event wrestling matches. There was a expectation that main event matches were going to last an hour. You know what I mean? As opposed to WWF, I doubt that they had a match after they became WWF that went an hour until like Shawn and Brett at WrestleMania 12. But other than that, they didn't wrestle hour matches. That just wasn't something they did.
No. And, like Sting, as I said, like he barely even sells for the first 10 minutes. The first like major time he is on the back foot is about 15 minutes in when he slams his elbow hard into a corner pad. And that's when Flair like really starts to take over. Like he, uses his smarts and some crafty fish hooks to get on the offense. And, we get the full Flair offense. We get, the axe handle, the knee drops, a fish hook every now and again. And I just love watching Flair here. Like such a really like good balance of athletic, exciting, looks smooth as heck, like really convincing offense.
My favorite Ric Flair move was the knee drop. That was the one. And even now, even more now, it's my favorite move because it looked like he was absolutely killing that person with his knee. And now when you watch it through 2026 lights, you look like he was barely grazing him. He was barely hitting him with the knee, but it was just like, in my eyes, he was just like, oh my God, he just dropped a knee on this man's head. And it just always looks so smooth and so beautiful.
Yep, the roll afterwards.
Yeah, how he would do it. And I always wondered, how didn't you hurt your knee? Because when I would drop my knee on my brother's head, my knee would hurt after I did it. But he just rolled smooth and keep going. And it was just like, it's still today one of my, after watching again, one of my favorite Ric Flair moves that he does is the knee.
And like about 20 minutes or so in, as we said, Ric Flair is like starting to take over. And that's when I really think like this match, as I said, it's pretty slow to start with when Sting's on the offense. And the crowd like warms into it, but they really start to come up for it when Flair's on the offense. Particularly like 20 minutes in, Flair had been, taking over for a little while, and Sting starts to psych himself up. And he starts to no-sell some of Flair's offense, and the crowd like just really starts to get behind him when they see that he is starting to like put in some resilience to what Flair is seeing, because they've seen like that he's got the power early on, but Flair was able to take over. But then he starts to fight the way back in. He gets the Scorpion Deathlock in, and it's about 20 minutes in. Two things, Floyd. First, like Flair's selling of the Scorpion Deathlock and the peril of it, incredible, absolutely incredible. But I've got to ask, sharpshooter, Scorpion Deathlock, what are we doing here? I know you love your Bret Hart, you're a little stinger. What are we doing here?
So when I was young at this time, Scorpion Deathlock, I had Scorpion Deathlock. But as I got older and I saw the care that went into Bret's sharpshooter, he was, he wanted it to look like a truly effective finishing move. So he'd slowly put the left leg, and he'd get back, and he'd really lean back into it. So yeah, I definitely prefer the sharpshooter now. But as a kid, when I was getting put in it by my brother, it didn't matter what you were calling it. It just hurt.
And then after it's actually a move that looks very awkward to take as well.
Yeah.
Like,
and I just wanted to say, someone got put in their finisher and then they didn't win the match. This is not a 2026 thing.
Yeah, that's true. And look, straight afterwards, pretty soon afterwards, after that rally, Flair, like he starts going after Sting's leg. Because he's like, okay, I've got to set him up for my finish, my submission, the figure four. And Sting is just, he gets him in it, and he's just using the ropes, grabbing the ropes when the ref's distracted, and Sting's selling it, of course. And eventually, of course, Sting gets the reversal where he rolls over and reverses the figure four. And I think that is just like such a genius. I don't know who came up with it. but such a genius thing for a submission to have. Like, you've got a deadly finisher, but if the other person can manage to roll over it, can grit their teeth and roll over it, then they can put the damage on. And it's such a great way to get the crowd like oohing and ahhing and cheering and booing and like urging their favorite on, because it's not just a fight for, oh, I'm fighting for his survival. It's like, oh, if he can roll it, then he's on the offense suddenly, and the tables are completely turned against this dastardly guy who's using the ropes. It's absolute genius the way that they do that figure 4.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was amazing because it was such a simple logic of when it comes to the technical side of professional wrestling. I will tell you, being put in a figure 4, reversing it does not actually take the pressure and put it on the other person. You're just still hurting. But I just remember that, and I always thought I would have loved, and they never did it. And again, it's 30 years later, so it's not, or 40 years later, it's not gonna happen now. But I always wanted the guy to put you in a figure 4 when you reverse it to end up tapping out to the reversal of the figure 4. I always thought that would have been a great ending of a match, and it never happened. But yeah, in this case, it was just like really cool because Flair, dude, he was one of the all-time salespeople. But when you reverse that figure 4, he's selling it like this is the worst thing that has ever happened in his life, and he needs to get out of it, and it forces him to release it.
Flair, the one thing I'll say about the figure 4 though, reversal, is it always looks sloppy when it rolls over. Like the legs are everywhere and they always fall apart. But I mean, that's also part of it, right? Like, I guess that's that almost adds to the realism. But yeah, Flair's selling, as you said, like the hair's going everywhere, and it's the same when we talked about him being in the Scorpion Deathlock, like the hair flying everywhere, the long hair, the blonde hair, and it's so distinctive because it's so white, and he's just yells out so loudly. And his body language, just the way he like bends his body, and you can see the pain through all of his body when he's selling. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. It's one of those things, how much his hair played into his selling. And it was just like, I'm like 6. So of course, I don't know. This is just a fight happening. But the 45-year-old Floyd's looking at it, and it's like, oh shit. Okay. His hair is helping. His hair is like an advantage in helping him tell the story. So I thought that was kind of cool.
You know who's also got that hair?
Who?
Kenny Omega. He has that hair that does that. The hair just frizzes up and goes everywhere, and you can see that he's been in a fight because his hair's everywhere. I think Hangman does it as well a little bit. It's not as much as Kenny though. Kenny's hair is just absolutely wild.
He is
how it like goes, because it's so curly as well. Like it's not just distinctive like in terms of the color like Flair's is, but it's just because it's so curly and it fluffs up.
Yeah, and through the match, as it gets where it tells the story of the struggle without them doing anything extra.
Yep. I just, the last like compliment before we get into the final stretch of this match that I want to give it is like the way that they pace this match, because they're going for 45 minutes, right? And that's a long time. So in a match, you've really got to like pace yourself, and you've got to be able to master the pacing and also not burn out the crowd as well. Because if you get the crowd like too early, then you're going to potentially burn them out, and they're going to be flat when you really want them in it at the end. And man, the way that they like slowly accelerate the movements and the sense of desperation in this match, and the way that they're wrestling it, in terms of the speed that they're going at, and how hard they're talking everything, and just the sense of emotion and desperation that they're portraying as they go along, it really helps bring that crowd and build that crowd to an absolute cacophony in that final 5 minutes, where, Sting is just a tidal wave in the final 5 minutes coming, because Flair, he's had most of the offense through the middle, and then in the final 5 minutes, Sting is like a tidal wave, and Flair is just so desperately trying to survive, using every ounce of his ring smarts. He's dodging Sting's offense where he can. He's like trying to tie himself up in the ropes a little bit, but Sting is just like beating his chest. He's pounding punches in. He, eventually gets the Stinger splash, and with 30 seconds left, he locks in the Scorpion Deathlock, and Flair's just in agony, and the commentators are like, can he do it? Can he do it? And the crowd's cheering Sting along. It just builds to like such a climax right at the end, like perfectly pacing it so that the crowd is absolutely up at the absolute peak of its emotion as they hit that time limit, and as Flair manages to hold on and goes to the 45-minute time limit. It just the pacing throughout, and that final like 5 minutes or so when Sting is just coming back like a tidal wave onto Flair, brilliant.
Yeah, this is peak Ric Flair. This is Sting hadn't fully got to his full powers yet, but this was peak Ric Flair. This was the master class. Now we go to school, everything. And it was just like how him and Sting held the crowd in their hands in 45 minutes. And they would give them it wasn't a lot of false finishes, but Sting would get hot, and Sting would get hot. And it's like, okay, he may be able to put him away here. And Ric Flair would do something sneaky to get back to the advantage. The one thing I saw from this 45 minutes is that they did a good job of making it even. You know what I mean? Sting had the advantage at first, then Flair had his long advantage, and then it just went back and forth. So let's just say if you were a judge, you're like me watching the show.
Yeah.
I couldn't say Sting definitively won. I couldn't say Flair definitively won because you're watching the match and it was really back and forth. If you were going to say Sting definitively won, it was probably because he had him in the Scorpion Deathlock at the end of the thing. But you're like, if you watch the match, it was paced where it was really hard to determine who had the advantage.
And Flair definitely had his advantage at times. And was putting the pain into Sting as well. It wasn't just him, cheating and stuff. He was genuinely getting his moves in and stuff. And of course, it goes to the judges, as you've said. And Paddy Mullen, the Penthouse model, goes for Ric Flair. And then Gary Jester, he's the NWA official. He goes for Sting, and Sandy Scott marks it a draw. And that officially rules the draw. So for some reason, two of the judges don't get a vote, or we never hear their vote, but it's announced as a draw. The crowd's not happy. They boo. But Flair celebrates. He gets to retain his championship with J.J. Dillon, who's let out of the shark cage. And, J.J. Dillon doesn't really factor into it at all, except for, shouting encouragement to Flair.
The shark cage actually did what it was supposed
to do. It actually worked.
Yes, because now a person will drop a weapon from the shark cage or they'll
rub themselves with oil and slip through the cage bars.
Yeah. And I'm like, it was always a way around it. And it was just like, the shark cage, what you want. You guaranteed a one-on-one match, which was great. And it's like, and it was just a flat out draw. And it was just like, this match did what ideally when you have great matches, both guys came out looking. Ric Flair looked like Ric Flair. He was. You couldn't say he looked better because he was considered the best wrestler in the world at that time. But Sting came out and everybody's like, "Oh, Sting's eventually gonna get him." They got the draw. Other matches where I'd say this reminds me of Cody and Darby. Darby's first match where he went 20 minutes with Cody, and it was just fine. They're like, okay, this was setting up that Darby was going to be, this was early AEW, that Darby was going to be a guy, and just happened a few days ago, Mercedes Moné versus Maya World. It gave me this match vibes where it was like this very established wrestler against this young person that people think maybe they can be something one day. And it was like, in the match. And not only for me, it elevated Mercedes, but for a lot of people, it just established like Mercedes is one of the best wrestlers in the world. And then it elevated Maya World. So when wrestlers are doing their job, like Ric Flair, which he was excellent at, this is what he was the best at, was elevating people to his level so he could make money with them at house shows. So could you imagine if they're doing a Sting Flair road trip after this, and you're a little Stinger, You're like, Mommy, Daddy, Sting's going to do it. When he's in Oklahoma City on this Sunday, he's finally going to beat Ric Flair, And it's like, it was good stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys would go on to have many, many matches.
Dude, to the point where I got bored with it after.
Yeah. Well, look, I haven't seen many of. Well, I've seen some of their matches. I certainly haven't seen anywhere close to all of them, but I feel like nearly all of their matches are like, if they're not direct copies of this, they're very much like developing off it. Like, this is the definitive Flair and Sting match, and it really sets the template for what things are going to be like in the future for them.
Yes, and it was like you saw a little bit of the no selling the chops, and as they evolved over the time, they took it, and every time Sting and Flair would wrestle, there was to be one more thing that Ric Flair did that Sting was ready for. And by the time they had their last match on the last match of Nitro, Ric Flair couldn't do anything to Sting. He was just Sting was just always ahead of him. He knew all of his tricks. He had locked up with him so many times, and they told this evolving story that happened over roughly 15-year period.
I believe they even had a match in TNA later on. I didn't see it, but
I mean,
probably the less said about that, the better.
Sting and Ric Flair's last match, in my mind, was the last night of Nitro.
Yeah, look, honestly, that's a fitting place for it to end, given like the legacy of WCW and the big role that these two would play in it. The fact that this is their first meeting is going literally up against WrestleMania 4, and then that meeting on the final Nitro is like, it's the end of this promotion, the end of the fight against the WWF that these two were such a big part of for such a long time as well. What a match though. Like, absolute tour de force from Flair, as far as I'm concerned. Like, he is everywhere in this match. He's the glue holding it together. He's selling. He makes Sting look so good, but also like Sting brings the fire in this match so well, and you can see why people got behind him and why people believed in him.
Yeah, I mean, like, Ric Flair was the general in that ring. And he was the master class. He was the professional. He a professor. He would always say, "Now we go to school. I'm going to take you to school tonight." And then, of course, Sting is young. In every sense of the term, he has the advantage over Ric Flair. He's bigger, he's stronger, he's faster, he's younger. But Ric Flair has been doing this so long that I'm not gonna beat you with my athleticism anymore. I'm past that. I'm gonna use your mistakes against you. And Bret Hart was a lot like that, especially in Shawn. Most of his matches were built around that. It wasn't that I was going to beat you. It was that you were going to make a crucial mistake. I'm the perfect wrestler. You're going to make a crucial mistake, and I'm going to take advantage of it. And that's what Ric Flair was in 1988.
Yeah.
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.
Let's sort of move beyond this match directly, and let's talk about, I guess, some of the things we can take from it. The first thing I want to talk about is time limits and draws in AEW. There's something that AEW has done a little bit of, not a lot, but they've done a little bit of it. The thing I just wish, and I don't know the reason, I was thinking why this is. I've always disliked that they only ever announce time limits when there's going to be a draw or a long match. Like as soon as they start bringing out the time counts, you're like, oh, well, now I know this match is going to go for a draw. Like if they did it for every single match, if they announced minute time, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whenever they're even when it's, a match is going to finish in 12 minutes, if they do the 10-minute announcement, it just helps make those ones when it is going to go long feel even more epic but more natural as well. When you're going to go for a draw, it's like, oh, well, we've done this. And I was thinking why this might be the case. And the only thing I can think of is that somewhere, someone in the back, it just thinks like, if we announce times, then people are not going to pay attention until we get to like 15 minutes, or they're not going to pay attention to whatever's happening, or they're going to tune out until we get to the later time calls. That's the only thing I could think about as to why they don't. But I just think it'd be so much better overall.
You're competing against cell phones now, which is not something Ric Flair had to compete against.
Yeah, fair.
You like now you put someone in the chin lock or a figure four early in the match. People are on Facebook. I say Facebook because I'm old, but people are on TikTok, Instagram, any of those other sites, and you have to keep their attention. So if you tell them, hey, we're announcing this amount of time, well, I don't need to pay attention until 20 minutes until the match. I actually, when I'm talking to people a lot of times, they're like, yeah, I didn't really pay attention. You hear that? Yeah, I didn't really pay I knew the match was going to go long, so I didn't really pay attention early on in the match. And, I heard that with Shota and Pac. He's like, yeah, I watched the last 10 minutes from the last show that I just watched. So it's like if you're having conversations with people, the more conversation you have, the more you get it, and you will hear that people truly do tune out. They truly tune out during early parts of matches until it's time to, oh man, that last 10-minute stretch was great. Well, that's all I watched of the match.
Yep. Now judges in AEW. We did it once. They did it once. In Cody versus Jericho, there was judges. They never came back ever.
You said the name.
Why don't they do it? It's
1988 pro wrestling is Cody Rhodes' porn. Okay.
Yeah. Brandy comes in. Have you been watching that? You've been watching that Jim Crockett.
He's like, so you didn't
mid-sound.
So you didn't do this? They haven't done this since Cody left? Yeah, no shit.
Well, they didn't even do it. Like they never did it again. They didn't. They didn't do it. They did it once.
Yeah, this was that was part of the Codyverse, as they called it back then. Cody's over here doing this thing. He's like, let's bring in judges. Let's bring in It
was part of the Codyverse. It would have been part of the TNT run. Like surely, it happened once. Never again.
You saw that Codyverse slowly get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Yeah, it's like definitely. Judges in wrestling, it doesn't work anymore. It just doesn't. It's like 2026. We know what we're watching. We know, it's like how you're judging a works match. Everyone knows that they're watching a works match. That's what I tell people. It was like suspension of disbelief is even more important now than it was then, because you thought it was real. So you didn't need to really suspend your disbelief. Now, because you don't know that, you do know that it's a performance, stuff like the judges just don't really come into it anymore. I would, like the young person in me would love that if that was hot again, because when they were going through the people, I was like, okay, Sting. And then when that woman picked Ric Flair, I'm like, whatever the worst name you could come up with in 1988 was. I probably called her a stupid head or something. I was 6.
I just think there's storytelling potential there. Like, what if Don Callis bribes the judge?
Yes.
Like that's a story you could tell, or like MJF bribes the judge, or and it's something you can do with the wrestlers in the back office, your Paul Whites, or when he was around, Mark Henry or Ricky Steamboat, who seems to pop up every now and again. Hell, Sting.
Dude.
Bring him out, make him a judge.
You just gave me a story where MJF and Mark Briscoe are wrestling, and it's like you find out before the match that MJF basically has all the judges in his pocket. So you even see more of a desperation from Mark Briscoe to try to get the pin, because if he knows he goes to the judges, he's not going to win. So
yeah, exactly.
That would be pretty awesome.
There you go. Tony Khan, when you listen to this, Tony, you're welcome. Just take it. You don't even need to give us credit.
I always say that. Yeah, dude, steal my shit. I'm okay, because as long as it makes my show more entertaining, I don't care where the idea came from.
Let's talk about the wrestlers a bit, because that's one of the things that I got out of this was when I was looking through this, I came across a quote by Tony Khan about Ric Flair, and it sort of shed a light on a number of things for me, but I wanted to speak about it here, Floyd, and I'll speak about it in 2 weeks' time as well, with Andy when I bring that up, because as I said, we're doing back-to-back things, and the reason I felt like it would be good to do back-to-back Ric Flair episodes is because when Tony Khan was asked to name a wrestling Mount Rushmore, he named Steve Austin, Bret Hart, Sting, and then Ric Flair. And the thing he said about Ric Flair is, I also think that Steve Austin, and I would agree about this, any wrestling Mount Rushmore must include the Nature Boy Ric Flair. I think the Nature Boy Ric Flair, to me, is the person I grew up on. My first message board name was Tony Flair, and I'm a big Ric Flair believer. And I absolutely think Ric Flair, to me, growing up, was the person that I followed for the longest time, who I thought wrestled at the highest level. And there are so many incredible Ric Flair matches and moments, so I'm a huge believer in Ric Flair. This is a guy, this was his favorite wrestler as a childhood. So Ric Flair has had a significant influence on Tony Khan's taste in wrestling, and probably his, to this day, what he sees as a wrestler, what he sees as a champion. Floyd, who is AEW's Ric Flair?
Well, if anyone that's listening to the show has ever listened to All Things Elite, I've said this repeatedly, that our modern day Ric Flair is 3 letters, MJF. And that's the male side. Actually, I'll elaborate in a second, but MJF understands it. If you watch most of MJF's matches, he is on the defensive most of the match. He uses shortcuts. He uses all these things. Even the robes that he comes out with, the fake tans, the everything about him, that he's the rich millionaire and that he's better than you. It is all an evolution of Ric Flair. He is doing 2026 Ric Flair, and it's Kobe doing a cosplay of Jordan, because it's so fucking good that you really can't tell the difference anymore, that how good MJF is. And it was like, people, when you look at it, it's just like, this is, when you think of classic pro wrestling, this is how you build a company. You have a heel champion that's just smarter than everybody else. And then you see these people, like the Dusty Rhodeses of the time, the Lex Lugers, all these people that have some sort of advantage over him, but he's crafty, he's smart, he's not afraid to cheat. So it's like if you look at it, Mark Briscoe is MJF's Dusty Rhodes. I don't know if Mark Briscoe's ever. I don't think he's ever going to win the title. But he doesn't have the teeth. He's the chicken farmer. In every way, he's the common man to MJF. He is the antithesis of MJF. And if you look at it, you could think of Hangman as his Sting.
I was going to actually ask because I immediately thought Hangman as well.
Hangman is his Sting, and I was trying to think of who his Luger would be, but no one's that bad at wrestling in AEW that can be compared at Luger. So, but no, they don't push those, the big powerhouse guys like that in the AEW. I mean, because it would. Even though he's really better at wrestling, it'd be somebody like Brian Cage, that has that lumpiness to him. Oh God, yeah. I mean, Lex Luger, dude. You couldn't tell me anybody had a better physique than Lex Luger when I was that age. It was like Lex Luger was like the ultimate male. And so now it's like, and we like, look at Brian Cage now. So, but yeah, it's like the parallels between MJF and Ric Flair are just amazing, but he did it, so much younger, and he's so much more dynamic. And it was like when people were talking about, like, well, he says this stuff and it's edgy. And it's like, yes, 2026, it's edgy. 1988, it was standard. Ric Flair would say, literally, fat boy. He'd call people. I can't even say the things he would call people because I would get canceled. And I would just get canceled for repeating. I'd be like, he said this. And I would get canceled for it because that means I said it. So I can't even say it, but that's what they did back then. And it's like MJF, like the one thing about him is he lives the gimmick, just like Ric Flair. And, he seems to have more of a healthier personal life than Ric Flair. Who knows? But Ric Flair gave everything to professional wrestling. And you saw, because of the train wreck that is his life, he gave everything to it. But MJF, like, he loves it. He lives the gimmick. He is a 1980s professional wrestler in 2026 with 2026 athleticism. And it's amazing. But after Sunday, I will say there is a female Ric Flair. And her name. Can
I just, before you jump in there, I wanted to just mention something. I'll probably go into it more in 2 weeks' time, but I've already done the research, so I just wanted to bring it up. A big thing I've noticed with MJF and comparing him to Flair is the selling, particularly the vocalization when he sells. It's something that MJF does that's different to most wrestlers today. The vocalization while he sells. Sometimes I think he goes a little bit overboard with it, like when he yells out, like when he swears or something, and when he's like getting suplexed. And it's almost bordering on a little bit comical. I don't love that, but it's very clear where he's got it from. He's got it from watching Ric Flair, because Flair is very vocal when he's selling, and that's something that MJF does that I don't think other people do. And it's funny thinking about this and looking at this quote, because like, I respect MJF, but I don't love him. I think he's having a great year this year, fantastic year, but he's had some really bad years, and I don't love him as a performer as much. And so sometimes I have been, like a bit frustrated at how protected he is by Tony Khan, how much Tony Khan seems to love booking him, particularly compared to like my favorite wrestler, for example, Hangman Page, who I don't think gets the same booking care that MJF does. And part of it is just like, Tony Khan's booking his favorite wrestler. Like, as a kid, his favorite wrestler was Ric Flair. His favorite wrestler, and so MJF is his favorite wrestler. And so he gives greater booking care. And like, there's just something about that makes it, it's like, this isn't something malicious. It's just, this is his favorite wrestler. Like, his wrestling taste. I love Ric Flair. Therefore, he loves MJF. Like, and that's just the way it is. Like, that's just the way it is. And what can I do about that? Like, I'm not going to complain that, that's his wrestling taste. I've equally got a wrestling taste and a subjective opinion. I could throw other reasons why I think, I would do different things, or I'd give greater booking care to someone like Swerve or Hangman or Kenny. But, at the end of the day, MJF gets booked really well by Tony Khan, partly because Tony Khan really believes in him, because Tony Khan believes in a wrestler that looks this way. That's how he sees wrestling. He sees wrestling as Ric Flair in the 80s. He sees that as that's what he wants to book. And so, of course, he's going to put his instrument into that. And I can argue with that, but there's a sound logic to it, and there's also like an element of it is that this is how he understands wrestling. And that's just the way it is.
You see people, and you have what I always call them, you meet people through this, and you have wrestling soulmates, people that you meet that like it exactly the way you like it. Like they love, for me, they love FTR, they love Takeshita, they love Cody. They're wrestling soulmates. And I truly believe, the more stories I hear, that Tony Khan and MJF were kind of wrestling soulmates. they see professional wrestling the same way. And if you look at that Crockett period of time and you look at American wrestling, right? Long babyface runs aren't a thing. You know what I mean? Flair would give up the title for 6 months.
Not in there. Not in the 80s.
Yeah. During Flair's big time, which seems to be the establishment of Tony Khan's fandom, babyfaces didn't keep the title that long. It was like you got the title for a few months, then you dropped it back to Flair. You dropped the title. That's how he got to 16 times. You know what I mean? He would have the title a year and a half, 2 years, and then he would lose the title to whoever the hot babyface at the time was to see if they could carry the gate. And most of the time
it's just different philosophies. It's different philosophies. And this is Tony Khan's philosophy on wrestling. So he gives, I think he books MJF better, partly because it's not a malicious thing. It's as much as anything, it's just like, this is how he understands wrestling. He doesn't understand booking a face the way he understands booking a heel.
And I don't think anyone in American wrestling has really gotten it down.
Not today.
They haven't gotten it down because the danger you're running into is people love your team when they're winning that first title. Like whatever sport you're watching, whether it be football or basketball, the up and coming team wins their first title. And it's like, yay, you won your first title. But when you're getting to your fourth title, it's like, oh, you become the Yankees, you become any of the other, you become the Patriots, the elite teams, and people hate you because you're winning. So as a babyface, you could accidentally turn yourself heel because you win too much, aka Cody Rhodes and AEW.
Yeah. The only guy who's done it in had multiple long face reigns that have remained hot is John Moxley. In 2020, he had a nearly year-long reign and remained hot the whole time. Now, that's a bit of a weird one because it wasn't in front of live crowds.
I think it was February to December.
Yeah.
That's not really
it's not long. No, it's not long.
That's what I'm like. But that's considered like long for a babyface.
Yeah.
You're getting towards the end of where you can be for your babyface, where a heel can hold the title for 4 years. The heel can hold the belt for 2 years. It's like you're calling that a long run, and it was only 9 months. That's
true.
By no definition is that really long. You know what I mean? But so it's like, because people start to hate you if you win too much. Building compelling heels for that long period of time is incredibly difficult. The only time I've seen it done as a fan is Hogan's run. You know, when they would just build up a different monster and he would beat them. But even part through that, the reason they did the change is because fans were starting to turn on Hogan. It's like this ultimate American babyface during a time where America was, like, oh, we were super pro-American. People were still tired because you get tired of seeing people win all the time. You want to see your new guys win. You want to see Steamboat win. You want to see Ultimate Warrior. You want to see Macho Man win. I'm using the 80s time. And it's now you want to see Hangman win. You want to see Swerve win. You want to see the other people win after a while. And it's okay.
Will Ospreay win at Wembley.
It's okay if you're tired of a heel winning. It's okay. But you can't get tired of your babyface winning because you stop spending money on them.
Yep. No, look, wrestling hasn't always been that way, but certainly in its modern form, which sort of starts in the 80s when you've got TV, it is heel champion heavy. You're absolutely correct about that. In the era before TV, so the ticket selling era, you'd probably call it, most territories, the main champion was a face, but that was a ticket selling thing rather than a TV drawing thing. And I think that changes things pretty dramatically. So
absolutely it does. Yeah, it absolutely.
And we've seen
changes.
that. I think you make a pretty compelling proposition there. As much as I like to think, there's a different way you could do things.
I think your best hope is someone like Will Ospreay, because he puts on such dynamic, amazing matches no matter who he's with. I could buy him going a year to 18 months because a Will Ospreay match is a main event match anytime it's on. But what you would have to do is almost like MJF. He would have to wrestle less. You would need him on Dynamite and Collision in tag matches, in true three, but he should only be defending the title on pay-per-views. So to make it okay, the only way to see Will Ospreay in a singles match is on pay-per-view.
Well, I think
that would be the way to do it.
I think the key is not just that, but you've got to be building up challenges around him, because like you look at what happened with Hangman last year, he won the championship, but there was no one built up around him to face. Whereas when MJF won the championship, you had Hangman, you had Swerve, you had Andrade, you had Kenny, and they were all sort of coming to the forefront at that time and being booked as challengers. Whereas when Hangman won, it's like, well, who's my challenger? We haven't really built up enough heels who are ready to go up against you. So your first program's going to be again with Jon Moxley, and then after that, I guess Wardlow. Wardlow. Oh, he's injured now. Kyle Fletcher. Then, like, there weren't. If they're going to do Will Ospreay, they need to have heels ready to go on the other side. And to be fair, what are they doing with the Death Riders right now? I'm fairly confident we're going to. Well, I'm probably about 75% confident that we're probably going to end all in with Will Ospreay and his head in a plastic bag. If not then the Dynamite afterwards, it's going to happen.
I was going to say the Dynamite after. They do like to give everybody their moments at All In.
Yeah.
So, Mox is obvious. Seems like it's obvious he's going to be the first challenger.
And that's a good thing. That's a good thing that they're thinking of that already, because they need to have that.
Yeah, it's funny because I had this thought after I got off one ONR that this kind of reminds me of the movie Invincible, where Mr. Glass is trying to build he's trying to find he knows he's a supervillain, and he's trying to find a hero that is worth fighting. So he's literally training the Bruce Willis character to be this superhero so he can do the big unveil that he's the villain. That's kind of Mox right now. He's like, I don't feel like someone's on my level, so I'm going to build you up to my level so that I can destroy you and give me somebody worthy of destroying.
Now, I interrupted you. You were saying there is now a women's Ric Flair, and I guess I know where you're heading, but I'll let you pick up your point, Floyd. I just wanted to jump in there and finish talking about MJF, and we can pass that on. But you wanted to talk more about that.
Mercedes Moné.
100%.
Oh my God.
Great.
Oh my God.
Great call. I didn't think of it, but great call. Especially after, for those, we're recording this literally the day after Forbidden Door. So it's like smacking us in the face right now.
Yes. And it was just like, just think about how many women that their best matches or best rivalries over the last 10 years has been with Mercedes Moné / Sasha Banks, to the point where
let's list some off: Bailey, Charlotte,
Bianca,
yeah,
like and like in there it's like Maya World, and and it's like she is the measuring. Yeah, she's the measuring stick. She Willow, she is the measuring stick. She is the blueprint. It's like if you can't hang with her, you're not allowed to be in AEW. That's period. And we've seen that with a person. We've seen that with a person that had not a great match with her at All In, and then it was like, oh, we really have no use for you anymore because you can't hang with the standard of the division. This person that makes everyone look amazing. It's like, so if you can't look amazing in a match with Mercedes Moné, why are you here?
And even just to the point, like, you think of Flair touring the territories as champion. And what was Monet doing? She went around and won all those belts, and then she went around and lost them all as well. Like, putting over wrestlers who had no business going over.
And everyone's like, she's not going to go back and lose to this person in the middle of and she bloody well did. She went ahead and did it, and it was just like, like sometimes I always say I'm a little slow on the giddy up when it comes to certain people. Like someone like Oba, I immediately gravitated to Takeshita after I saw him
with Oba. It's easy to see the vision, man. Like,
you
take one look at that guy and you're like, if he can remotely wrestle, there's something there.
But when it came to Sasha, when it came to the 4 horsewomen, she was 3. Bayley was always 4 in my mind. Yep. And it was like I never saw what everybody else saw. I never did. And it was just like, I knew she was good. I knew she was elite. I knew she was one of the best. And then Sunday, I was like, oh, this is the best women's wrestler I've ever seen. Oh my God, this is. It was like, why haven't you seen this for the last 10 years? Where has your head been in your ass? She's been this good. But you're just not figuring it out. And so when it comes to it, and you'll probably hear me talk about her more, because I feel like I'm just catching up. I'm just on the same page as everybody else. I wasn't there. And she dragged my ass there. And it was like, oh God, she's so good.
For me, it was the Bianca match. The Bianca match at WrestleMania 37, I think. Oh man. Phenomenal performance from her. Like, it's pulling Bianca through. Not that Bianca, like in that match, Bianca more than well and truly held her own. Whereas against Maya World, it was like this woman is, falling apart. And Mercedes Moné's like, nah, that's not going to happen on my watch. I'm going to make this work.
I have seen Maya World wrestle probably as much as anybody, like, live, because I live in this area and she wrestles out of Texas. I've seen her wrestle a lot. And I honestly can say, it was like, oh, she's a good wrestler. I never thought she was bad or anything like that, but never like gravitated to her as a wrestler. And now after this match, I'm like, she's going to end Athena's forever run, because Mercedes made me think that highly of her. Mercedes made Maya World money. That's how good 100%. She is. Yep. Like we're lucky she's not a free agent or something, because WWE is throwing that money down. Like, oh, we just saw you come with us. They did with Stephanie McCurry. She got Stephanie McCurry in WWE. That's how good Mercedes Moné is. So she's getting other women paid. That's how good she is. And
I think that Flair Moné comparison's a very good one, as is the MJF one. Like, I immediately, I almost felt like I didn't even need to ask you, Floyd, about the MJF, the Flair comparison. I like that you got the Sting Hangman one there. That's a good one there, I think. That's a good one.
No, I give Hangman a lot of shit. I give him a lot of shit because it's fun for me.
You like stirring us up. Floyd, the social suplex is known as like the Hangman stand zone, Like, there's people who say that when Hangman isn't around, that we're more rowdy than we should be. So you're like enemy number one, man.
So when Hangman isn't around, I'm happier than I should be. So I'm like, every time they do something good, and I was like, and they did, every time they put on a pay-per-view, and I'm like, and they did it without the fucking horse.
Look, let's cancel the slander. We'll stop the slander. But what I wanted to end this podcast with, though, Floyd, was because we ended up talking a lot about Ric Flair, but he isn't actually the reason I originally reached out to you to do a match. It just happens you picked a Ric Flair match, and I was like, and I found that quote with Tony Khan. I was like, well, we have to examine this when we're looking at what went to influence, like what influenced AEW. We have to talk about his childhood favorite wrestler. Like, of course, that influenced AEW, and we've done a lot of that. But the thing I actually wanted to talk about with you was Sting, because Sting became such a big part of AEW, and like, what AEW did with Sting is it's one of Tony Khan's, the best things Tony Khan's ever booked is the career of Sting in AEW. And the fact that they were able to give him the run that he did when he was someone who had, like, he stayed out of WWE until he thought there was never going to be another hope for something outside WWE. And when that happened, I guess he thought to himself, well, I guess I don't have anywhere else to go to, like, cement my legacy. And so I'll take the money, I'll take the Hall of Fame induction. But, like, I think it's fair to say now, like, his heart probably wasn't in it, because literally the second that he could leave WWE and go somewhere else, he joined AEW. Like the minute his contract ran out and he could join AEW, he went and did it. And I think that was special for Tony Khan. And I think it's special that AEW was able to do that for Sting in particular, because he is the guy that refused to join the WWE for so long when he was one of the guys in the WCW.
So the thing about Sting and my relationship with Sting is we talked about this match, and I saw him wrestle in TNA. I've seen him wrestle pretty much in every company. I've seen him wrestle in every company he's been involved. That WWE match at WrestleMania 31, I happened to be there for. The reason I bring that up, it's not just to brag about places I've been. It's just my relationship with Sting has been like a lifelong fandom. Wherever he is, I've made sure I was there. And I'm going to do my best not to tear up right now, because as many legends as I've seen pass away, all the different ways legends have passed away. And very rarely do they get to go out that way. And I love Ric Flair. Grew up loving Ric Flair. And when he had that match with Shawn Michaels, and I'm sorry, I love you, that's how his career should have ended. But guess what? Money. You need money. You like bills. Just because you retired doesn't mean bills don't need to be paid. And it was the only thing Ric Flair had ever done in his life. So, so he had to keep going. And then I remember getting the pay-per-view for his last match and watching that and being sad because Ric Flair wasn't Ric Flair anymore. And there was nothing wrong with it. And I'm like, never wrestle again, sir. And if you ever do wrestle again, I'm not watching it, because I want to remember this version of Ric Flair, this 1988 version, the Shawn Michaels version, where he could still go, So when it comes to Sting, and he has the match at 31, which he thinks is going to be his first and last match in WWE. And it goes off well. He loses or whatever. I felt satisfied. If that was going to be in his career, that would be in this career. And then he came back and did the Seth match. And then he gets hurt in the Seth match. And it was like, this sucks. The last match that you see Sting, he ends up getting injured and looking kind of like an old man. Then AEW comes along, and I didn't think he was going to wrestle. And they, through the wrestlers in the company, through Tony Khan, through booking, they give him this farewell tour that culminates in Greensboro, North Carolina, where this match happened. And fortunately enough, I do get to be there. And he has his sons in the ring and the Young Bucks, who if you listen to One Nation Radio around the time of Forbidden Door, I just go back on how good they are. And this, like, if you want to talk about this moment, my love for the Young Bucks went to the highest it could. It was what they did for Sting in his last match, and with the brothers and Darby jumping through the glass. And it was this perfect moment. And how many of your favorites in any sport, in real sports, get to go out like that, winning the championship, or retaining the championship, leaving as a champion, and in this moment of love for Sting. I don't think it can be replicated. I do think other older guys are going to come to try to get their Sting run. I truly think there's only one Sting run. I think it was done perfectly. It was booked perfectly. And it was like, if Tony Khan never does anything else in professional wrestling, which, he will, his existence to me was solidified in that Sting run. It's the greatest thing he's ever, other than, of course, a lot of wrestlers getting paid and making a living. For me as a fan, it's the best thing he ever did in professional wrestling. And it's going to be hard to beat.
I think one of the things that makes it so special as well, as I was sort of saying, and I'm not sure if I vocalized this clearly enough, but like the legacy of Sting is the WCW guy.
Yeah.
And he's the Jim Crockett guy. He's the WCW guy. He's the TBS guy.
Yep,
and
the franchise.
And that's the lineage of AEW. Even the fact that you've got Tony Schiavone, you've got Jim Ross.
Correct.
Like, and Jim Ross is wound up with the WWE. Like his legacy is sort of intertwined with that as well, but he's there. But Tony Schiavone isn't. Like, and you've got that lineage and that string that goes through. Like, I don't know if there's any other wrestlers that have that, because all of the other wrestlers, like you think about the other wrestlers that you associate with WCW, you've got Flair, who he went to the WWE. And had that run in the WWE, which would last a while. There's just not, the guys that are in the NWA, they're back and forth. The Booker T, someone like that, Booker T is part of the institution that is WWE at this point. Maybe you could argue Jarrett, Jeff Jarrett, potentially, and they sort of tried and failed for a run with him, a retirement run with him, when it, I
will say this: the best thing about Sting's retirement run is he did it without ever making any of the young people look bad.
Yeah,
he never lost, but they didn't really put him over anyone. And that was, I think it was because they did protect him in tag team matches, 6-mans and all that kind of stuff. And they made sure it was safe and all that kind of stuff. Like I said, I don't think it can be replicated. Everybody's like, just do what you do with Sting.
I don't think it can either.
I don't think it can be replicated. I think you can come in and bring older guys in and give them final goodbyes, but no one with that reverence of Sting. You know what I mean?
There's one wrestler that I think they could do it with.
Who?
It's not quite the same, but Dustin Rhodes.
Yeah, I could definitely see it.
He's the other guy that, he was on TBS. He's particularly, like, his family lineage is WCW, TBS, Jim Crockett. He has like the Gold Dust run in WWE, so it is a bit more mixed. Like, even thinking about like Jericho, for instance, like Jericho, so much of his career is in the WWE, and then then you're looking at, okay, well, who are the TNA wrestlers like AJ Styles? Well, AEW kind of carries on that lineage from TNA. Like, Imp and I talked about AEW and talked about TNA a few weeks ago, but even then, like, it's not TBS, it's not that direct line. They're not the same, right? Like, I feel like the only other one would be Dustin Rhodes potentially, and even then it's not quite the same, because Sting was the holdout. He was the one dude that, as I said, like, he never crossed the line until he thought there was just nothing left. He probably just thought there would never be anything. And then, but then of course at some point we're going to get to the guys that never went to WWE from the 2010s, and you're going to have guys like Kenny Omega one day, probably the Young Bucks one day.
Yeah.
I don't think they're ever going to go anywhere, and their legacy is going to be all elite wrestling.
Hangman.
Yeah. Yep. One day, in hopefully many more years' time, like, hopefully we get that. And we'll see what happens there, for those guys, and we'll probably get it at that point. But
you think about it, only one member of the elite, I'll call them the Elitals at that time, only one of them actually went to WWE, and that was the guy that had already worked for WWE.
Yep.
So, and it's
the guy who talked the most shit.
Yes. Oh, dude. It's one of those things, and people like, I have very passionate feelings about people, and like, what about Cody? I was like, Cody never said he was never going back to WWE. If you ever listen to him, he always said, I don't think they want me. That's how he always put it.
Yeah, he said, I think I've burnt that bridge.
Yeah. He never said, I don't want to go back to WWE. He never said, I have no desire to go back to WWE. What he is now is what he always wanted to be, and I'm happy for him, because, at the time, he was almost, and, I can say this years later, he was a distraction for AEW. Being there was a distraction. He did not fit what AEW was trying to do anymore, even though he did help build it. You know what I mean? And it's like, I'm not trying to sit here and diss him on his birthday, No, it's just like he's where he's supposed to be. And, and when you get older, and I'm not acting like I'm 90, I'm 45, but when you do get older, you realize sometimes things at that time you hate end up working out the way they're supposed to. And it's like, Cody was never going to be the guy in AEW. That wasn't Tony Khan's vision for professional wrestling. So I get to live in a world where one of my favorite wrestlers, MJF, is on the top of one company, and then one of my other favorite wrestlers, Cody Rhodes, is on the top of another company. I don't get that world if Cody stays in AEW.
Yep.
So
we're miles off the plantation at this point. But let's keep going anyway.
Yes.
I've got one. We're talking Cody Rhodes. Do you think he could ever? Because maybe he is one of the guys that could potentially retire in AEW. As one of the founding members of All Elite Wrestling. Could he come back? I don't know. What would that look like? I don't know. That
professional wrestling
could do something compelling with it for sure if he came back.
Professional wrestling has this thing where you never say never, and I've pretty much adapted that to my life. I try not to speak.
CM Punk is back in WWE.
Yes.
Best friends with Triple H. Never say never.
I try not to speak in absolutes, but I think if you're looking at Cody's trajectory for his life and what he wants, it's not coming back to AEW. Yep. If he ends up back in AEW, something has really went wrong in his life.
After that failed presidential run, hey?
Well, no. I think ultimately he wants. I think ultimately he wants Triple H's job.
Probably.
I truly think that. Ultimately, he wants Triple H's job. He wants to be a content creator. And if he doesn't get that job, I think he'd very, very okay running NXT. But I think all roads, pun intended, lead to him staying there with the security, which is WWE. Because there were some hurt feelings in AEW. We may never fully know the story other than the back channels of this is what I heard and this is what I heard. Because he's like, he loves to bring it up without ever saying anything.
Yes.
And it's like,
Cody, we're trying to talk about something else.
Yes. And he loves to bring it up without saying anything. And at this point, it's like, I either want to know the 100% unfiltered truth or just never bring it up again. I don't think Cody's coming back to AEW.
That thing he said about you take the disrespect from the Yankees, you don't take it from someone else. Man, if you're Tony Khan, you have to be like, oh, fuck you, dude. Come on.
Again, and the reason I have never picked a side because I don't know the story.
Yeah, true. It's true. We don't know.
I don't know the story. I am AEW through and through, do the podcast, love AEW. That's where 90% of my wrestling money goes is to AEW. But I can't pick a side in this situation because I don't know the sides. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was some minor offense that Cody took, too hard, or Tony Khan just decided, hey, I don't need you anymore. You know what I mean? You were never in my line. It's like, and personalities bump heads. I've worked. I've been working since I was 14. I've worked with plenty of people I hated. And I've worked with people where I'm like, I can't be here anymore. And I have to go find a different job. So if you're just treating wrestling like a job, they just didn't like each other at the end. That's all you can say. They didn't like each other. But until I get more information, to me, there is no side. I'm just going to watch wrestling.
Floyd, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to have to draw a bow over our conversation now.
No, it was beautiful.
We've gone all over the shop tonight.
Yes.
But
very much enjoyed. We did a good job keeping it AEW.
We ain't talking about anything and everything.
Yes.
Look, really great suggestion of a match. Very fun to go back and watch. And really dig into and think about. Also thinking about everything that's around it, and as well, I think suggesting this match unlocked that quote about Ric Flair, and I think it's a very interesting thing to dive into and thinking about how this is Tony Khan's favorite wrestler as a kid. And of course, when we're looking at, as I want to this season, what are the things that went into influence AEW? I looked a lot at New Japan early because, of course, that did. But, going further back, this is what he grew up on. This is what little Floyd grew up on. This is what little Tony grew up on. And what has influenced what you love, Floyd, and what Tony Khan loves as well. Batista was my first favorite wrestler, so take that as you will. But I'll leave you guys now. Floyd, if the good people want to find you, where can they find you?
Dude, I feel like I've been everywhere, but now you can follow me directly on Twitter at Floyd Johnson Jr. I tweet from there more than I tweet from at AT Elite Pod, which is the All Things Elite Twitter. It probably should be backwards because I think the ATE one is actually verified, but I just never tweet from there. But I will definitely be tweeting this show when it's time. But yeah, that's the best way. All Things Elite. Our goal is to record every Thursday. It gets in flux sometimes, especially around pay-per-view time. Me and Austin Sumowitz, we do our best to cover all things ATE or AEW with a slant of positivity. We try our best not to focus on things we don't like and give more energy to the things we do like. Like if you heard the One Nation Radio review, or at this point, you would see I focus more on everything I liked about the pay-per-view and not the one match I didn't really care for. I'm going to talk about the stuff. I want to talk about wrestling in a way that it's not talked about anywhere else, which is more positive, not to spin, just instead of doing an hour about why did they put over Micah in the buy-in or whatever, which, I honestly don't have a problem with. That was just the best example. I'm going to do an hour and a half on why Will Ospreay and Swerve did a superhero movie better than DC this week.
Look, honestly, you saying that, talking about wrestling differently, that's why I do this show.
Yes.
I feel like we dig deeper here. And that's one of the things I love about Social Suplex is we've got a lot of shows, right? But every show is different. Every show has got a different slant, and every show is going to make you think about wrestling in a way you haven't thought before. So the best way to subscribe, I think, is to subscribe to the Social Suplex podcast feed, because that's got all of our podcasts on it. It's got Trish and Sarah. It's got One Nation Radio. It's got All Things Elite. It's got Imp. It's got Keeping It Strong Style. It's got everyone. Got Tunnel Talk. And if you aren't subscribed to that, I'd highly suggest you subscribe to it. Listen to all the podcasts. As I said, you can listen to Floyd on All Things Elite on his podcast feed or on the Social Suplex podcast feed. And make sure you keep track, because in 2 weeks' time, as I said, we're continuing this little in-depth look into Flair. We've seen him as a heel in 1988. We're going to go fast forward to 1993, where he is the face coming up against Big Van Vader in WCW. That is a match that is really worth watching as well. As I've done with this episode a couple of days ago, I will be putting the actual match up on the Discord in the AEW Match Guide thread, so you can watch it beforehand. I definitely suggest doing that just to prepare for this podcast. You'll be able to visualize and get in on the conversation as well on that. And then 2 weeks from then, I'm really excited about this. I'm going to be going back to All In 2018, and we're going to be doing a bit of a different show. We're going to be reviewing the whole damn thing. It might be a bit of a marathon of a podcast. We'll see what happens. But I'm very much looking forward to that. So stick to it. If you've enjoyed what you've listened to today, please rate and review. Give us that rate and review. And if you want to chat to me or let me know what you thought about it, then jump into the Social Suplex Discord. But thank you again, Floyd, for joining me. Always fun having you here, my friend. And thank you to everyone for listening. I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Flair, Vader, retirement, championships on the line. It's a big one. It's going to be fun. I will see you then. And until then, bye. Thanks for listening to the AEW Match Guide podcast. If you enjoyed the show, then you can subscribe on the podcast app of your choice so you never miss an episode. Also, feel free to let me know on Twitter at @Sir_Samuel. I'd love to hear from you. The AEW Match Guide podcast is brought to you by the Social Suplex Podcast Network, where you can find many other fantastic podcasts discussing not just AEW, but all parts of the world of professional wrestling. Looking forward to seeing you again next week. I'm Sam Brown.
Most people don't realize how much their personal information is being bought and sold every day. Data brokers are making billions, pulling details about you from public records and the internet, and then packaging and selling it, usually without your consent. That's how your information lands in the hands of scammers, spammers, even stalkers. It's why you get endless robocalls and why ads seem to follow you everywhere. That's where Aura comes in. Aura actively removes your data from broker sites and keeps it off. They also instantly alert you if your information shows up in a breach or on the dark web. But Aura goes beyond data protection. With one app, you get a VPN, antivirus, password manager, spam call protection, dark web monitoring, and even up to $5 million in identity theft insurance, all backed by 24/7 US-based fraud support. Other companies might sell just credit monitoring or just a VPN. Aura gives you all of it, together, at the same price competitors charge for just one service. Start your free trial today at aura.com/remove. Protect yourself now at aura.com/remove.